Turning to government finances and the fiscal stance, this positive economic picture is translating into expected pickup of tax revenues, and we see this increase in tax revenues in the numbers. We have numbers here, I think, until the second quarter that we have taken into account regarding tax revenue, and so we expect still a budget deficit on the current budget in 2023-2024 because expenditure has also increased and has increased a little bit more than the pickup in tax revenue, and so this is not taking into account a budget for 2024 because we haven't received that yet. So this is purely basically an extrapolation of expenditure in 2024 and some pickup of the revenues in 2024, and then we see a slight decrease of the budget deficit for Sint Maarten. But these numbers will change once the budget has been received. Public debt, this kind of development, high nominal GDP growth, small deficit translate into a gradually declining debt level. The debt levels in 2022 were almost 40%, and then we expect in 2024 a very small decline in the debt level, and if this could translate into a debt level of 35 or 36% in 2027. So after government and public finance, we go to the external sector. So we look at the current account deficit, the balance of payment. We see that we still, for the monetary union, so these numbers are not for Sint Maarten, but for the monetary union, we still have a current account deficit. Current account deficit in 2023 that is above 10%, and in 2024 going to 12 negative, so a current account deficit of 12.1%. I mean, this is reasonable in that you would see a decline in the current account deficit after the pandemic when it was increasing, but we would have hoped or expected maybe a little bit quicker decline in the current account deficit for the monetary union. But at the same time, financing is coming in. There's foreign direct investment, so it's not an issue from a financial stability perspective. We see that the import coverage is remaining adequate, still on pretty high levels with 4.7%. Sorry, not a percent. So this is the import coverage. So it's 4.7 months of imports that we have in our reserve level, and so that is still seen as adequate, and we expect it to decline as long as it is above 3 months of import. That we have a coverage of 3 months of imports. We see this as healthy and adequate. Well, there's always risk, so we have presented now here the forecast, given current insights in the global economy, given current insights on what we see on the ground in the tourism sector and other sectors of the economy of Sint Maarten and Curaçao. But obviously there are risks to this outlook. I mentioned already geopolitical conflicts that can have an impact on prices, that can have an impact through prices on interest rates, and that will also impact the economy of Sint Maarten. What is also important to monitor is the CFATF mutual evaluation. That's a relatively new one on our risk dashboard. That is important for Sint Maarten as well. So Sint Maarten is going to be evaluated by the CFATF on its framework for anti-money laundering and terrorism financing. And so this evaluation is important because it will influence the cost of doing business in Sint Maarten through how easy it is to do business in terms of using financial services, correspondent banking, and that kind of channels. And that's why we have included it from, I think, last economic bulletin in our risk monitoring. Looking at monetary policy, for the monetary union. So in parallel with the major central banks, we have also increased our policy rate to make sure that we are in line with other central banks. Given our fixed exchange rate, we want to make sure that there's no incentive for residents and investors to bring money outside the currency union. And that's why we increased our policy rate. And our foreign exchange position, so what is the result and how is this translating into our international reserves that we have as a central bank? And we see that it remains broadly stable. So when we compare the number for November 2023, so for this year, it's roughly the same as the foreign reserve we had on our balance sheet in November 2022. But for the whole year, for 2023, we expect a small decline, but next year a small increase. So roughly stable. We expect our foreign exchange position to be. This is important because we monitor obviously also the credit that is being provided by banks to the private sector. That's on the right hand side. It depends on the liquidity position of the banking system. The liquidity position has decreased, which is a result of providing credit, amongst others. But if we look at the loans to the private sector in Sint-Maarten, then in recent months, it has been quite slow. And so that might be an indicator that growth is slowing down. Obviously, this we will monitor closely going forward, because I will expect that this is going to be picking up again a little bit in the second half and the first half of 2024.
At RBC, we know the roles you have to play can change quickly. Whether it's a homeowner, a new parent, today's head chef, or the family chauffeur. Whatever life asks you to be. RBC is a bank for all of you. Win Christmas cash with a no-fee loan from RBC.
Are you SXM insured? Do you have a valid medical insurance status? SXM is cardless. Request your My SXM account today and enter the virtual office of SXM. Go to sxv.sx and sign up now.
SXM, yeah. Your social health insurances.
There is a significant amount of economic losses or potential gains dependent on the performance of GB. The fact is, Mr. Chairman, we have to acknowledge that there are many complaints and concerns within our society regarding GEBE. And I did note the answer to my question regarding, let me pull this one up. So I'd asked the question, Mr. Chairman, what specific, Mr. Chairman, can you just confirm to me how much time I have left? I had posed the question, what specifically, or have we any ideas on proposed solutions that GEBE is making to compensate for all their mistakes and errors? This is a reflection of what many people in society want to know. And the answer we received is, of course, I believe from the government, but I would expect the tone of the way it is written comes from GEBE. GEBE recognizes the impact of system restoration challenges on billing accuracy and is actively working to address any errors. Customers are urged to submit all the necessary documentation to rectify these issues. Now, this is the canned response that you see on social media and in the newspaper from GB that, hey, if you have a problem, just come in and solve it. But in practice, Mr. Chairman, we have a real situation where some people are trying to send this information. In the meantime, facing potential disconnection while they're trying to solve the fact that there is an error. Mr. Chairman, I think the only real solution maybe can come from the next part of the answer. Regarding consumer relief, GB remains open to dialogue and is exploring viable solutions considering the current economic situation. Nonetheless, the responsibility of consumers to pay their bills promptly and manage their energy usage cannot be understated. Let me address the last part first, Mr. Chairman. I think our population does not get enough credit for, even if it is just on the fear of disconnection, how if bills are properly given, they meet their obligations to GEBE. In other words, if GEBE is functioning 100%, I would venture to guess, especially with the threat of disconnection, that more than 90% of our people would pay their bills. So if it is our concern is that people are not coming in to pay their bills, partially can be due to economic issues, but that has now been a little better over the last year. But a lot of it has to do with the fact that people are receiving wrong bills. They do not have confidence in what they're receiving. They have been making payments when they were told, go ahead and make your payment, and we're going to register it. And then they get a bill for 10,000 gallons, and it's like, but wait, I did not get my payment registered on the receipt. So while I understand what GB is saying, yeah, everybody has to pay their bills, but GB has a responsibility to give correct bills. So if both sides are not fulfilling their responsibility, in my opinion, government has to step in for the people. And Mr. Chairman, I believe we have to seriously consider, especially considering that this 2023 budget becomes the active budget by law if we don't have an approved 2024 budget when January 1st comes. This is the budget that's going to be used from January 1st, if I'm not mistaken. And I think that GEBE and the government have to come with a very serious relief program for our people, in which the people of St. Martin have suffered for quite some time. We have a budgeted amount of 6.5 million guilders that is supposed to come from GB to the government, and I do not think now is an opportune time for the government of St. Martin to be taking that money out of GB. Mr. Chairman, I think that money should be deferred to future years, and at this time, on the condition that GEBE allocates that towards a relief program for our citizens to compensate for all these errors, to create a bad debt account because some of these will become uncollectible. But now is not the time to take money out of GB. Now is the time to ensure that people really receive relief and have the opportunity to relieve such. So I believe that in the 2024 budget, but considering that the 2023 budget is done, I would like to know at what point in the calendar year is GB expected to pay their concession fee to government? Because I would need to know, based on this answer, on how much time we have to be able to ensure that this needs to be put on hold until GB can figure out a way to provide relief for our people. Because all of us understand, we all get the cries out there, but we are the Parliament of St. Martin. We are the ones that determine the budget of the country. And I can understand where the government is going to look at me, and understandably so, but we have civil servants to pay. We have expenses. Yes, we do. But if it's one area, we should not look to raise money at this moment, considering what has happened at GB, it's not from GB. Because, for example, when I received the answer from the minister on the tourist levy now is at its final step, because this had already received advice from the Council of Advice. One of their major things was allow the SER to review this. Now it is just pending the SER advice, and we're very realistic that we can get this passed within 2024. So let's go collect from the tourists instead of collecting from our power company and our people, for example. Let's create a timeline for when this tourist levy would pass to when GB is owed this concession, and instead pass that relief on to the people of St. Martin. I would like the position of the government on this proposal, and as GB has stated here, they remain open to dialogue. Is the government going to have this dialogue based on my recommendation today? Mr. Chairman, there's a couple other things that I asked about, and one of the things I know that has been very popular out there because of the concern that has caused is regarding Revolut. Mr. Chairman, I've since done significant research into this matter, and I've come to the conclusion that based on our own legislation, there is no law preventing people from St. Martin, residents of St. Martin, from using online banking services. If an online bank wishes to list St. Martin on their service, some countries have very specific legislation about the listing of it. And the interpretation of one tax lawyer that I went to, who was also very familiar with the central bank legislation, that is not targeted, the Article 2 of the Central Bank Ordinance is not targeted to being able to list your services. Similarly, like how you would need a retail license to open a store in Phillipsburg and sell shoes, but Amazon does not need that same license to sell those goods online, it is the same thing. And I really hope that we can continue to open the market to St. Martin and the access to our local people to be able to use these international e-commerce services, combined with our own efforts to develop it locally. Because there are limitations to what the Parliament and the government can tell the banks to do. And they have not been innovating when it comes to e-commerce. We know the government and the Ministry of Finance has been trying, and that is a very commendable effort. And I believe that that will blossom simultaneously with the services that we have internationally as well. So I believe that it is very important that if what I said is incorrect, if that can be verified with the central bank, but my information says otherwise, and I hope that these services continue to be able to make themselves available to the people of St. Martin. Because if this is a very scary precedent that might start to be set, where people that make their money on YouTube and Spotify and Shopify and all of these services may now be at risk. Finally, Mr. Chairman, this is just honestly not really a budget-related question, but it was a question that falls under the Ministry of Justice that I never really thought about. It might be directed more to the Ministry of Justice or perhaps the General Affairs Minister.
Your social and health insurance is your social and health insurance.
Are you SXV insured? Do you have a valid medical insurance status? SXV is cardless. Request your My SXV account today and enter the virtual office of SXV. Go to sxv.sx and sign up now.
Your social and health insurances.
At RBC, we know the roles you have to play can change quickly. Whether it's a homeowner, a new parent, today's head chef, or the family chauffeur. Whatever life asks you to be. RBC is a bank for all of you. Win Christmas cash with a no-fee loan from RBC.
Well, it's the time of year when athletes trade their sporting equipment for more formal attire. All part and parcel of the 2023 edition of the Barbados Olympic Association Awards Gala, staged this year at the Barbados Sandals Resort in St. Lawrence Gap. The president of the BOA, Sandra Osborne, got the ball rolling by acknowledging the consistency of Barbadian athletes in multi-sport events.
We equaled the medal count earned at last year's 3 games, in which we won 13 medals in 6 sports. And in 2023, the 13 podium finishes were across 10 different sports, which is evidence that we are developing elite athletes, not just in the sports in which we have traditionally excelled.
Minister of Sports Charles Griffith dispelled the notion that government is making sport at sports, highlighting subventions to national federations, disbursement of developmental money, and the Community Coaches Program, among other initiatives. Mr. Griffith also touched on some of government's plans to upgrade facilities.
The construction of a 400-meter track. We are in the process of constructing an additional 400 track at our location in Wilde that will help take some of the pressure off the National Stadium and off Usain Bolt as well. We are again in the process of constructing a multidiscipline facility. You now call it the Netball Stadium, but on completion, this will be a facility that will facilitate basketball, netball, and volleyball. Plans are also in train for a squash and badminton home at the Wilde site.
Before the featured speaker, Professor Konstantinos Georgiadis, Honorary Dean of the International Olympic Academy, made his way to the stage. Dr. the Honorable Stetson Red Plastic Bag Wiltshire performed one of his hits.
I want to give praise with me hand raised, singing hallelujah, hallelujah.
Well, in his PowerPoint presentation, Professor Georgiadis explained the meaning of Olympic education.
The educational process through sport and arts is the harmonious building and cultivation of young people's character through actions stressed to honing physical abilities, social skills, cultivating their ethical principles, developing their aesthetic perception and humanitarian awareness so as to create a better society.
On to the major awards of the night. The People's Choice Award went to Carifta medalist Ashlyn Simmons, who garnered 1,320 votes. Performance bonus awards for podium finishes during the year were presented to a long list of athletes in various disciplines, including track and field, surfing, shooting, triathlon, boxing, squash, equestrian, cycling, and hockey. Long jumper Tion Haynes took home the Junior Male Athlete of the Year award. Junior Female Athlete of the Year was swimmer Heidi Stout. The Senior Male Athlete of the Year was triathlete Matthew Wright. The Senior Female Athlete of the Year was 400-meter World Championship bronze medalist and national record holder Shade Williams. And the final trophy of the night, the President's Award.
This athlete won a bronze medal in the 2014 Commonwealth Games and a silver medal in the 2022 Commonwealth Games. At the Pan Am Games in 2015, a bronze medal, and in 2019, a gold medal. At the CAC Games in 2018, 2 gold medals, and in 2023, a gold medal. And I think you all know who I'm talking about, Shane Brathwaite.
So congratulations to all the national athletes. Here's hoping for more success in 2024.
We make our way to Gonaïves, one of Haiti's major cities, for a high-risk meeting.
Right now, we're traveling north to meet with Ambassador, the guys who have control of certain areas.
In the middle of the city centre, 2 men armed with assault rifles come to pick us up. A surreal scene. They chat quietly, passing local residents who are unfazed by the show of force. They want to show us that their weapons are not toys. This gang has been accused of assault, shop robberies, and rape. But today, they prefer to present themselves as a simple citizens' militia that defends the neighborhood.
Gen lot moun azam ki kon vin fè violence nan zon nan. C'est ça qui fait nous obligés kembe zam pour nous protéger tout business qui nan zon nan avec population. Des bandits qui ap vin aider nous.
In essence, They have plenty of enemies. They are called Grand Grief Ticho, fearsome criminals or vigilantes. The authorities have officially counted 76 armed gangs in the country. Theft, murder. These armed groups do not shy away from any show of force. Their leaders are often considered heroes by the population. The most powerful of them is nicknamed Barbecue. His speciality, burning people alive in their homes. We met him in his neighborhood.
Je n'ai jamais tué pour de l'argent.
Mais vous avez tué pour autre chose.
Je ne sais pas ça.
To finance themselves, these groups have triggered an unprecedented wave of kidnappings in the country. Every day, 10 people are kidnapped in the streets of the capital. No one is safe, neither poor nor rich.
Ils ont enlevé l'ancien commissaire, ils sont montés avec lui dans la voiture, ils sont partis.
On the 30th of April, we were there to film the release of 2 French religious leaders, hostages who spent 19 days in detention.
Il y a eu des moments difficiles.
This small island in the Caribbean Sea has long been called the Pearl of the Antilles. Now it has become Haiti the Cursed. In 2010, an earthquake hit the capital. 300,000 people died. The state has been bankrupt for decades. To keep the country in order, each president has financed their own militias to rain terror in the neighborhoods controlled by the opposition. Organized violence at the hands of political parties. Now gangs rule even in the center of the capital, and the police are powerless. A climate of constant instability which is causing discontent amongst the population. And a real panic amongst French people who live there.
Il peut se passer n'importe quoi, n'importe où et à n'importe quel moment.
An investigation into the country on the verge of chaos.